We are in Matthew 7, 1 through 6. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces.
All right. We are starting a new series today from Bible verses that you all have recommended. The working theory is that if the Idaho legislature mandates the reading of scripture in schools, we're going to crowdsource and make a little catalog of verses that should be read. In case that legislation gets implemented, we want to be able to upload and say, hey, as long as you're going to be reading the Bible, maybe read these parts of the Bible. So that's what we're doing today. We're having a little fun with that. And so the first one that was sent in was actually by Eleanor, and she wanted to know about this passage that says, do not judge, when, as she rightly points out, just even in verse 15 of this chapter 7, Jesus tells us to be wise as serpent, but gentle as doves. That sounds like you have to make some discerning decisions there. And in Matthew chapter 10, just 3 chapters later, Jesus says you'll know a tree by its fruit. Well, how do you do that if you don't judge? So what is this thing called judging? So I'm going to tell you a little story. I was born in a dairy farm in Ohio, and I was raised in the suburbs of Chicago. Every summer when I would go back to Ohio, they thought I was a city boy, and then when I would return to Chicago, everyone thought I was a country boy. My freshman year of high school, we moved to Canada, and up there I was the Yank. But anytime I would come south of the border, everyone thought I was a Canuck. I loved basketball, and my freshman year, during the summer, my favorite basketball team was located in Western New York, the Syracuse Orange. And I registered for summer basketball camp at Syracuse. And so we were going to be in Ohio anyway, down from Saskatchewan. And so my parents just continued over to Niagara Falls and dropped me off at Syracuse. And I was so excited to be there. And the first night, we had a dorm meeting. So, for the hundreds of players, high school players that were going to be there, we all were staying in the dormitory, and we had to have a floor meeting. And I come into my floor meeting, and as you might expect with anything athletics, it was very racially diverse as we were doing warm-ups and everything. But when I came to my floor meeting, I was the only white person in the entire room. So our coach walks in, an African American, and he says, "Son, what's your name?" I said, "Bo Sanders." He goes, "Well, that explains it." So the question is, did anyone in that story judge me? I don't know. Because I don't know what's going on in their heart, right? It's possible for people in the country who called me a city slicker, but they may not have come with judgment, right? It may have just been naming that I was from a different place. And when I came back to the city, somebody considered me a country bumpkin, right? But if that doesn't come with an evaluation of my character or limit my ability to connect with them, that may not have been judgment. The Canadians probably were judging me, but they're very polite, And so it's possible that they, by calling me a Yank or viewing me as an American, were still giving me the benefit of the doubt. Right? And when I would come back south of the border, it's possible people were just joking with me that I had picked up some Canadian mannerisms or, some uniqueness, and they were ribbing me. It's possible that somebody made an assumption about me because of my name and just put me on that floor. And it's possible when that coach walked in, he thought one of these things is not like the other. But it doesn't mean it came with judgment. This thing about do not judge is a really, really tricky thing. I've been looking forward to talking about this topic for weeks. And then a couple days ago, I was with a group, and we were doing some exercises, and there were other groups as well. And one of the groups was much slower than the other groups, and I looked over. They were quite a ways away, and I looked over and noticed that they were unique in their composition. They were not only multi-generational group, but they were also different skin colors, multi-ethnic. And so I just commented that that was an interesting group. And so one of the people in my group said, "How so?" And I said, "Well, you wouldn't necessarily think that they go together, right? It's sort of a motley crew." And the person said to me, "That's judgmental." Because I knew I was preaching on not being judgmental, it really stood out to me, and I go, "Whoa, is that judgmental?" So I've been thinking about it for days. Because I didn't have any condemnation, right? I didn't say anything about their character or about whether I would like to spend time with them or what I thought they were up to. I just commented on the appearance, that it was an interesting collection of people, multi-gen, multi-skin color. I just thought that was interesting. Was that judgmental? I mean, it's not like I said, "I bet they're a bunch of libs." Right? Or, "Man, I'd hate to be in that group, dummies." Right? I didn't say anything. I just commented that it was an interesting group. Is that judgmental? I'm asking. Is it judgmental? I mean, if it was, then I shouldn't do that. Jesus says, don't judge. I didn't feel like it was judgmental. But one of the things I've been very aware of 20 years of youth ministry, is that people 35 and under are hypersensitive about judgmentalism. Because they are digital natives, they have their BS sensor is highly tuned. And so if anything is evaluated or in any way sort of commented on, they can sense, to them, that feels like you're being judgmental. And so there's a generational thing there. I'm very aware of it from years of youth ministry. And this person was significantly younger than me, but also it's possible that they were projecting on me because I'm a pastor, and they sort of probably expected me, right, to be judgmental. I don't know if you've noticed this. Religious people can be very judgmental. Have you noticed this? Now listen, sometimes when I say that, somebody will literally say to me, "Aren't you being judgmental?" It's an interesting, tricky thing. So what does it mean in this sense that Jesus warned us? What is he warning us against? So there's two aspects to judgment that we have to talk about. The first is it comes with authority. Somebody has to have the authority to make a judgment, okay? For instance, and I know you're going to think I'm kidding when I say this, a judge. A judge can be judgmental, right? It's part of the job description. It's in the title. That's what the judge does. But it has an authority. The judge has an authority there. The other thing that judgment comes with is consequence. There is an implication to judgment. So making an evaluation of somebody or an observation is not being judgmental. Now, it might be ignorant or condescending or many other things, but it's not judgment. Judgment comes with consequence. And I think those two things are really important for us to get in, to hear what Jesus is saying. Don't judge. You don't have the authority, and Because there is ultimately a judge. There is an ultimate judge. God, for those of us who believe in a higher power, or a divine and eternal, a transcendent, benevolent good. If anybody is ultimately responsible to judge, it's God's job, not our job. So don't judge. Leave that to God. It's actually a gift. A lot of times when we see the commandments in the Bible, we receive them as like an infringement. Don't do that. And there are lots of those in sacred texts and the law. But sometimes it's a gift to us. I think that the command to not judge is a gift because it lets me off the hook. Here's the thing. I believe in God. I don't know where you are on the issue. I believe in God. And because I do, there are two implications coming out of that free me up. The first is, I don't have to be God. There's already somebody doing that. There's already a God. I don't have to be God, which is great because I wouldn't be very good at it, right? So thank God there's a God. Second thing is, I don't have to be responsible for the consequences of someone else's actions. I don't have to make sure that their story ends the way that I think it should. I just have to be faithful to play my part in the relationship. Hopefully they play their part and things go well. And if it doesn't, because I'm not God, I don't have to try and figure out what the heck's going on their side of this relationship, because I don't have all the information. I don't know what kind of a house they were raised in, or how they were treated as a young person, or what they're dealing with in their personal life, or what chemicals they have in their system right now. I don't have all of the information, and I don't need to. I just need to be faithful to play the part that I'm called to play in any given situation. It's a gift. I don't have to lord over them or be in an omnipotent, all-knowing position. I'm not God. So don't judge. You don't have all the information, and there already is a judge. You just be faithful to be who you're called to be in this thing. It's a real gift to let me off the hook, because relationships can be tricky. Do you know any people? If you've met people, any of us, relationships are tricky. Friendships are difficult. Work relationships can be complicated. Institutions and authorities. And don't get me started on family. Don't get me started. Don't even get me started. Family's tough. So how do you be in a relationship but not be judgmental? It's interesting. Jesus doesn't just say that as a standalone, like in a vacuum. He actually continues and he says some interesting things like, don't throw your pearls before swine. Now, has anyone ever quoted this Bible verse to you? Have any of you been called a pig? I have. I've actually had somebody say, Jesus said not to catch your pearls before swine, so I'm out of here. And I'm like, am I the pig in this scenario? I'm the hog? There's a couple stances about judgment that I think we need to address. And I'm going to take it to the extremes on both ends. This admonition that Jesus gives us, don't judge lest you be judged. I actually know 4 different people who are different people, okay, on very separate occasions, who have said to me something like, I'm not afraid to be judged. Oh, interesting. So they were being judgmental. Then we tried to encourage them or reprimand them a little bit by saying, hey, Jesus said, don't judge lest you be judged. And they were like, bring it on. I'm not afraid to be judged. And I just want to say that is an ugly religious spirit. Can we just name that? If you think that you're in a position where you can judge because you're not afraid of what would come back the other way, you may have overestimated where you stand in the human divine scale. That's a religious spirit. I ain't afraid to be judged. Or as my friends in the Midwest would say, oh, you think your farts don't stink? Get over yourself. But I've had 4 different people over the last 30 years say something like that. And I just think, I don't know where you think you're standing before the Almighty sits, but you may want to recalibrate, friend. So that's on one end. Here's on the other end. Sometimes religious organizations and churches will use passages like this as a power play to disempower people, whether it's in relationship to the institution or in something like their marriage, to take away their confidence or their autonomy or their right to make sure that they're in a safe or good space by saying, this person's not acting very nice, or this person is doing things that make me uncomfortable, and that's called not being judgmental. Don't be judgmental. So we gotta walk this through. If you are in a situation, specifically in a home, and you are not safe, you're not cared for, your boundaries are being violated, or your physical person, right? You have the right, you don't have to be a doormat, you have the right to say, I'm not comfortable with this behavior, and I'm either gonna remove myself, or I need you to remove yourself until it can be corrected. That's not being judgmental. Remember, judgment comes with authority and consequence. You can even say, this is my home, and your presence here is not bringing about the kinds of things that I was hoping would be in this relationship or in this house or in this family. And if you're unwilling to correct what's happening here, you'll need to remove yourself, and you won't be welcomed here until that behavior changes. That's still not being judgmental. That's having good boundaries. Here's where it gets judgmental. You have always been like this, and I never want to see you again. Because you've made, right, a judgment about their character, and it has come with consequence to terminate their relationship indefinitely, regardless of the behavior. So that's my working theory. This is why we're working this out together. It's not judgment until it comes with consequence that can't be undone. So when you terminate a relationship, it's not saying, hey, when you're on this substance, or when you're in this place, or when you treat me this way, so this is the XYZ. When X, it makes me feel Y, and therefore Z. Okay, that's the XYZ. Judgment says, your dad was like this. You'll always be like this. I never want to see you again, right? You feel the difference? Versus, when you do this, it makes me feel this way, and until that discontinues, I don't feel safe being in this place with you. because you're leaving it open-ended. If the behavior were to change, if the attitude were to change, if something, then I'm open. We could renegotiate this. I still don't think that that's being judgmental. I don't think that's what Jesus is warning against. When Jesus asks us not to be judgmental, it's not to be in the seat of God, pretending that we have all the information and therefore condemning somebody with a sentence. So on one hand, I'm amazed that there are some people who say, I have no fear of judgment, therefore I will be judgmental. I mean, can I just say how weird of an attitude that is? Because it'd be one thing, if you lived that pious of a life, you would think that your heart would be full of love, grace, spirit, joy, those kind of things. And therefore, you probably wouldn't be that judgmental. It wouldn't be an issue. It's a very strange and ironic twist that you're being judgmental because you think you don't have anything to be judged for. What a weird fruit to bear out of living such an obviously pious life. I think it's weird. I'll let it go. But on the other extreme, making evaluations about people, not just observations about unique, whatever, but actual evaluation it's not judging. So if there were somebody, let's say abusing a substance in your house and making you and maybe your kids feel unsafe, and you had to ask them to leave, that's not judging them. That's having healthy boundaries. Judging them is putting them in a box where you define their character and determine their future. Having healthy boundaries says, I hope that this thing you're caught up in, this thing that you do, I hope it can change. And if it does, we can revisit what this looks like, but until then, I can't do this. That's not judgmental. Jesus says, you'll know a tree by its fruit. So there's an evaluation that has to happen there. And also to be as wise as serpents and gentle as doves. And that is in the same chapter of Matthew chapter 7. We have to be a discerning people. There is a wisdom that comes with faith. And part of being a person in faith is that we make evaluations about things that lead to life and things that close down those possibilities and start us towards death. I don't mean dying, I mean that darkness of death, which can show up long before you die. We have to be discerning people. Now, we also have to hold each other accountable. And if somebody makes, say, an evaluation of another group and you feel like it crossed the boundary, you can say to the person, was that being judgmental? And give them a chance to say, no, I wasn't saying anything bad about them. I was just saying, I wonder how they know each other, right? Not judgmental. Healthy boundaries, not judgmental. But I'm not focused on trying to stay clear of that line. I'm not looking at it in the negative. I want to give it to you as a blessing. You have the honor and privilege of not being God. Because there is a God and you're not God. What a gift. You can just feel that burden leave your shoulders. You don't have to carry the universe by yourself. You don't have to determine people's future. You don't have to do all the research to find out why they did what they did. You just have to be the person God has made you to be in the moment and to respond to them in the way that brings about their greatest potential for good and yours. It's a gift. Don't judge. You're welcome. It's a gift. You don't have to do it. It's already somebody in that position. You're freed up. I'm going to let you sit with your thoughts for a minute. If you have any feedback for me, you can leave it on those yellow pew cards and then put it in the offering plate. It'll get to me during the week. I'm going to enjoy these conversations as you continue to send in Bible verses that you want to talk about. I'm looking forward to it very much. I'll give you a minute to think.